Imagine risking everything to expose the truth, only to be laughed at in court. A courageous nurse takes a stand against a powerful hospital CEO, armed with evidence so shocking it silences a smug judge and sends shockwaves through the courtroom. What did she uncover that turned the system upside down? Stay tuned because this story will leave you speechless. Tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will leave you speechless. The courtroom was eerily quiet, save for the faint shuffle of papers as Judge Edward Marshall adjusted his glasses. His weathered face bore the marks of years spent presiding over cases that rarely surprised him anymore. He sighed, his voice heavy with impatience. "Miss Harris, I trust you know how much time this court has already spent on cases like yours." Monica Harris stood at the plaintiff's table, her hands gripping a thin folder so tightly her knuckles turned white. She felt the heat of dozens of eyes fixed on her, some curious, some indifferent. Her voice wavered but didn't break. "Your Honor, this isn't just about workplace discrimination. This is about patients. Patients who died because of negligence and greed." The judge raised an eyebrow, the faintest flicker of interest passing through his otherwise stoic expression. "Patients, you say?" He leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against the desk. "And I suppose you have evidence to back up such a bold claim." Monica hesitated for a split second, feeling the weight of her words. Her entire career, her reputation, even her safety hung in the balance. "Yes, Your Honor," she said, her voice firm now. "I do." Judge Marshall flipped through the papers in front of him, unimpressed. He let out another sigh, this one more theatrical, and glanced at the clock on the wall. "We'll reconvene when you have something substantial. Until then, this court is adjourned." The gavel struck the sound block with a sharp crack that echoed through the room, and Monica felt her heart sink. Around her, murmurs rippled through the small crowd. She caught a glimpse of Richard Blake, the CEO of Ridgeway Memorial Hospital, leaning back in his chair at the defense table. His lips curled into a smug smile as he adjusted the gold cufflinks on his tailored suit. He didn't bother hiding his disdain. Monica's stomach churned, but she didn't look away. She locked eyes with him, silently promising that this wasn't over. As the courtroom emptied, Monica gathered her papers and made her way out, her mind racing. The hallway was a blur of chatter and footsteps, but she moved through it like a woman on a mission. Her phone buzzed in her bag. Pulling it out, she saw a message from her son, Jaden. "Good luck, Mom. You got this." She smiled faintly, her resolve hardening. Jaden was only 15, but he understood more about perseverance than most adults she knew. He'd seen her struggle, juggling double shifts and late nights to provide for him. She couldn't fail him now. She wouldn't. Outside, the city roared to life. Cars honking, voices shouting, the steady hum of life going on despite the chaos in her own. She barely noticed as she walked toward her car, parked several blocks away. Her thoughts kept returning to the judge's dismissive tone, the way Blake had smirked at her. She couldn't let them win. She had to dig deeper. That night, back at her small apartment, Monica sat at the dining table surrounded by stacks of papers. Medical records, patient charts, notes she'd scribbled during her shifts. All of it painted a picture, but not a complete one. Something was missing. There had to be more. Her fingers brushed against a photo tucked under one of the files. It was a picture of her and her grandmother, taken years ago. Monica's grandmother had been the first to encourage her to pursue nursing, despite the hurdles. "You'll make a difference one day," she'd always said. Monica clenched her jaw. She couldn't let her grandmother down either. The clock struck midnight, but Monica didn't stop. Somewhere in those records was the proof she needed to make them listen. And when she found it, she'd make sure no one, especially Richard Blake, could dismiss her again. The following morning brought no relief. The hospital corridors were as cold and sterile as ever, the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead doing nothing to calm Monica's restless mind. Ridgeway Memorial Hospital, a place she had once believed in, now felt like enemy territory. She walked briskly past the nurse's station, her badge clipped to her scrubs, keeping her head low. She didn't want anyone to notice the growing fire in her eyes. "Monica," a voice called out behind her. She turned to see Dr. Elena Perez hurrying toward her. The young doctor's expression was tight, her dark eyes darting around as though she feared being overheard. "Do you have a minute?" Elena asked in a hushed tone. Monica nodded, and the two stepped into an empty supply closet, the faint smell of antiseptic thick in the air. Elena closed the door and crossed her arms, leaning against the shelves. "I saw you leave early yesterday. Did you take those files we talked about?" Monica hesitated, gauging whether she could trust her. Elena had been an ally, but only tentatively. The junior doctor had too much to lose: her career, her reputation, her license. "I did," Monica said finally. "But it's not enough. Something's missing. I need the mortality reports from last year. The full ones, not the sanitized versions they give to the board." Elena paled, shaking her head. "Monica, those are locked down tight. Only department heads and admin have access to that level of detail." Monica stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "Then help me find a way in. You've seen the same things I have, Elena. Patients dying from mistakes they shouldn't have made. Procedures delayed because the equipment isn't there. We both know this isn't just bad luck." Elena bit her lip, glancing nervously at the door. "Do you know what they'll do to us if they find out? People don't just lose their jobs over this, they get blacklisted." Monica didn't flinch. "And what happens if we stay quiet? How many more people have to die before someone does something?" For a moment, silence filled the cramped space. Monica could see the conflict in Elena's eyes, the fear battling against her conscience. Finally, Elena let out a heavy sigh. "Meet me after my shift tonight. There's a way we might be able to get those files." Monica nodded, gratitude flickering across her face. "Thank you." But before Elena could respond, the door creaked open, and both women froze. A towering figure stood in the doorway. Stephen, the hospital's head of security. His presence was as imposing as his reputation. He crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "Ladies," he said in a low, measured tone. "What's going on in here?" Monica's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Just going over some patient charts. Is there a problem?" Stephen's gaze lingered on her for a long moment before shifting to Elena. His lips curved into a faint, almost condescending smile. "No problem. As long as you're not where you shouldn't be. We're tightening security around here. Admin's orders." Without another word, he stepped aside, letting them leave. But as Monica walked past him, she felt his eyes boring into her back. It was a warning, one she couldn't afford to ignore. Later that night, Monica sat in her car in the hospital parking lot, her hands gripping the steering wheel. The day's tension had followed her home, and now it sat heavy on her chest. She glanced at the clock on her dashboard. Elena's shift would be ending soon. The minutes crawled by before a shadowy figure emerged from the hospital's side entrance. Elena slipped into the passenger seat, her face pale and drawn. She held a small, encrypted USB drive in her hand. "Here," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had to bypass 2 layers of admin clearance to get this. It's everything from the last 18 months. Monica's fingers trembled as she took the drive. "This could be it," she said, almost to herself. "This could finally be enough." Elena didn't respond. She was staring straight ahead, her expression haunted. "You don't get it, Monica. If they find out, they won't just fire us, they'll ruin us." Monica swallowed hard, knowing the truth of those words. But she also knew she couldn't stop now. Too much was at stake. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I won't forget this." Elena nodded, but her grip on the door handle betrayed her unease. "Just be careful." As Elena slipped out of the car and disappeared into the night, Monica stared at the USB drive in her hand. It felt heavier than it should have, a tiny object carrying the weight of so many lives. She didn't know how deep this rabbit hole went, but she was about to find out. The glow of Monica's laptop screen illuminated the darkened corner of her living room. The blinds were drawn, the locks double-checked, and her phone rested on the table, silenced. Jaden was already asleep in the next room, his soft snores occasionally drifting into the quiet. Monica plugged the USB drive into her laptop, her fingers hesitating over the keyboard for just a moment before she opened the encrypted files. Rows and rows of data filled the screen. Names, dates, procedures, outcomes. Monica's eyes darted across the screen as she scrolled through the records, each line a thread weaving a tapestry of negligence and deceit. Patients had died during minor surgeries, their deaths attributed to unforeseen complications. Equipment failures were listed as mechanical anomalies, but the most damning entries were the financial records. Expenses marked for medical supplies that never arrived, funds allocated for training programs that were instead funneled into vague administrative accounts. Monica's stomach churned. It was worse than she'd imagined. One case in particular caught her attention. A young boy, 8 years old, admitted for a routine appendectomy. The procedure had been delayed due to equipment shortages, and the boy had died from sepsis. Monica's hand shook as she clicked through the file, uncovering correspondence between administrators. The messages were cold, clinical, devoid of empathy. Delay non-emergent cases until funding approval clears. PR team can manage fallout. Her vision blurred with tears. She closed the file and leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling as anger and despair battled for dominance. How could they reduce a child's life to a line item in a budget? A soft knock startled her. Monica spun around, her heart pounding. For a moment she thought it might be Jaden, but the knock came again, louder this time. It was coming from the front door. She crept toward it, her bare feet silent against the floor. Peering through the peephole, she saw nothing but the dimly lit hallway. Another knock, harder now, made her jump. "Who is it?" she called, her voice steady despite the rapid thrum of her heart. No response. Grabbing her phone, Monica dialed Elena, her fingers fumbling on the screen. The line rang twice before Elena picked up, her voice groggy. "Monica, it's late. What's wrong?" "There's someone at my door," Monica whispered, her eyes still glued to the peephole. Elena was silent for a beat. "Do you see who it is?" "Number no one's there, but someone's knocking." Elena's voice tightened. "Monica, listen to me. Lock your door, check your windows, and don't open it. This might not be random." Monica felt a chill run down her spine. She ended the call and backed away from the door, securing the deadbolt. Her eyes darted to the laptop still open on the table. The USB drive was plugged in, its tiny LED light blinking steadily as if mocking her. She froze as another sound broke the silence. Not a knock this time, but a faint scraping noise at the window behind her. Slowly she turned, her breath catching in her throat. Outside the window, she could just make out the silhouette of a figure standing in the shadows. Panic surged through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She reached for her phone again, this time dialing 911. Her voice was steady as she explained the situation to the operator, but inside, her thoughts raced. Was this Blake's doing? Did he know she had the files? The operator assured her that an officer was on the way, but Monica didn't feel safe. Her eyes darted to the window, then to the door, her mind replaying every precaution she'd taken. Was there a weak point she hadn't considered? Minutes later, the sound of approaching sirens cut through the tension. The figure outside the window disappeared, melting into the shadows. Monica pressed her back against the wall, her phone still clutched in her hand. A knock at the door made her jump again, but this time a voice followed. "Police, ma'am, it's safe to open the door." She checked the peephole again, this time seeing 2 uniformed officers standing in the hallway. Slowly she unlocked the door and let them in, her voice trembling as she recounted what had happened. "Do you have any idea who might be targeting you?" one officer asked, his tone professional but laced with curiosity. Monica hesitated. She wanted to tell them everything. The files, the corruption, the threats. But she knew how it would sound. Without solid proof, it would be dismissed as paranoia, and she couldn't afford to tip her hand just yet. "No," she lied. "I don't know why anyone would target me." The officer nodded, but Monica could tell he wasn't entirely convinced. "We'll do a sweep of the area. In the meantime, keep your doors and windows locked and call us if anything else happens." After they left, the apartment felt oppressively quiet. Monica sat back down at the table, staring at the files on her laptop. The fear was still there, a gnawing presence in her chest, but it was joined by something else now, a cold, unshakable determination. They wanted to scare her into silence, but they'd just given her one more reason to speak up. The following day, Monica arrived at Ridgeway Memorial with a renewed sense of resolve, but beneath it, unease lingered like a shadow. She knew she was being watched. She could feel it in the weight of every glance from her co-workers, in the two casual smiles of the hospital administrators who passed her in the hall. They all seemed to know something, and that something was her. At the nurse's station, Monica pretended to go about her usual routine, flipping through patient charts and checking schedules. But her real focus was on the USB drive tucked into the hidden pocket of her scrubs. The files it contained were damning, but she needed more, something irrefutable, something that could withstand the hospital's inevitable attempts to bury her. She couldn't just expose them. She had to bring them down. "Monica!" The voice startled her, and she turned to see Stephen, the head of security, standing behind her. His imposing frame filled the space, his face unreadable as always. Administrator's office now. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Why? Is there a problem?" Stephen's expression didn't change. "You'll find out soon enough." The walk to the administrator's office felt like an eternity. Monica kept her face neutral, but her mind raced. Had they discovered she'd accessed the files? Had Elena been caught? She thought of the figure outside her window the night before and clenched her fists to stop her hands from trembling. Inside the office, Richard Blake was waiting. He sat behind a sleek mahogany desk, his posture relaxed, a picture of control. His tailored suit and perfectly combed hair contrasted sharply with the cold glint in his eyes. Standing to the side was Cynthia Lawton, the hospital's chief legal officer, a woman known for her ruthless efficiency in silencing dissent. Blake gestured for Monica to sit, but she remained standing, meeting his gaze with a defiance she hoped masked her fear. "You wanted to see me?" she asked. Blake leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Yes, Monica. We've been reviewing some concerns brought to our attention." His voice was smooth, almost condescending, like a parent scolding a child. "It seems there have been discrepancies in your performance recently, errors in patient documentation, tardiness, things of that nature." Monica's stomach dropped, but she refused to show it. "That's not true, and you know it." Cynthia stepped forward, her tone sharper. "These are serious allegations, Ms. Harris. If they persist, they could lead to disciplinary action or even termination." Monica's eyes darted between them, her heart pounding. This wasn't about her performance. It was a warning. They were trying to intimidate her, to discredit her before she could take any action. She squared her shoulders, refusing to back down. "If you're looking for an excuse to fire me, just say so. But don't insult me with baseless accusations." Blake's expression darkened, the veneer of charm slipping for just a moment. "Watch your tone, Ms. Harris. We're giving you an opportunity to address these issues before they escalate." The room was heavy with tension. Monica realized they were testing her, waiting to see if she would fold under the pressure. But instead of shrinking, she leaned forward, her voice steady and deliberate. "I've always done my job with integrity. Can you say the same?" For a split second, Blake's mask slipped, and she saw something flash in his eyes, anger, perhaps, or fear. But he recovered quickly, offering a tight-lipped smile. "This meeting is over. I suggest you take some time to reflect on your priorities, Ms. Harris." Monica left the office, her heart still racing. She knew what they were doing, and she knew it wouldn't stop. If anything, they'd only get more aggressive. She had to move quickly, before they found another way to silence her. Later that afternoon, she slipped into a quiet corner of the hospital library. It was one of the few places without cameras, a haven for staff needing a break. She pulled out her phone and called Elena. They know, Monica said the moment Elena answered. They pulled me into a meeting today, Blake and his legal bulldog. They're trying to pin false accusations on me. Elena swore under her breath. This is what they do. They'll build a case against you so that when you go public, no one believes you. Monica's grip tightened on her phone. We don't have much time. I need to get this to someone who can do something with it. Who? Elena asked, her voice low. The board? The media? They'll bury it before anyone even listens. I'll figure it out, Monica said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. But I'm not going down without a fight. As she ended the call, a thought struck her. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the number of Lisa Carter, the mother of the young boy who had died. Lisa had been hesitant to speak out before, bound by a non-disclosure agreement, but Monica hoped the mounting evidence might change her mind. The phone rang twice before Lisa picked up, her voice cautious. Hello? It's Monica Harris, she said quickly. I need to see you. It's about your son. Lisa was silent for a long moment, and Monica feared she might hang up. But then finally she spoke. Come by tonight, but you'd better not be wasting my time. Monica closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She glanced around the library, the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the muffled sounds of distant conversations surrounding her. For the first time, she felt the weight of the battle ahead, not just against Blake, but against an entire system built to protect people like him. As she left the library, she spotted Stephen watching her from across the corridor, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to keep walking, her head held high. They wanted her to feel cornered, powerless, but Monica had never been one to give up. The drive to Lisa Carter's house was tense, the kind of tension that seemed to seep into Monica's skin and settle in her bones. The city lights blurred past her window, the hum of her car engine the only sound in the otherwise silent night. Monica replayed the conversation with Blake and Cynthia over and over in her mind, each word sharpening her resolve. They thought they could intimidate her, bury her under fabricated accusations, and scare her into silence. But they didn't understand. They'd only lit a fire that couldn't be extinguished. Lisa lived in a modest, single-story home on the edge of town. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where porch lights were left on as an unspoken gesture of safety. Monica parked in the driveway and took a deep breath, clutching the USB drive in her hand like a lifeline. She wasn't sure how Lisa would react, but she had no other choice. She needed an ally who understood the cost of silence. The door creaked open before Monica could knock. Lisa stood in the doorway, her face drawn and tired, her arms crossed over her chest. You came, she said, her tone flat but laced with an edge of curiosity. I wouldn't have called if it wasn't important, Monica said, stepping into the small entryway. The house was quiet, save for the faint hum of a television in another room. A photo on the wall caught Monica's eye. A smiling boy with bright eyes and a mischievous grin. Her chest tightened. Let's talk in the kitchen, Lisa said, leading Monica down a narrow hallway. The kitchen was small but cozy, the table cluttered with papers and unopened mail. Lisa motioned for Monica to sit, then poured 2 cups of coffee. So, she said, setting a cup in front of Monica and sitting across from her. What's this about? Monica hesitated, searching for the right words. I've been looking into Ridgeway. The things I've found, they're worse than I imagined. I know. They're responsible for your son's death. Lisa's expression didn't change, but her grip on the coffee cup tightened. You're not the first person to tell me that. Monica leaned forward, her voice low but firm. I have proof, Lisa. Files, records, emails, everything they've been hiding. But I can't do this alone. I need your help. Lisa laughed bitterly, shaking her head. Help? What do you think I can do? They made me sign that damn agreement. If I say anything, they'll come after me. They'll come after me too, Monica said, her voice steady. They already have. But if we don't speak up, nothing changes. They'll keep hurting people. They'll keep getting away with it. Lisa looked away, her eyes glistening. For a moment, the tough exterior cracked, and Monica saw the pain that had been simmering beneath the surface. "You don't understand," Lisa said quietly. "They didn't just take my son. They took everything. My savings, my stability, my trust. I can't lose anymore." Monica reached across the table, her hand hovering just above Lisa's. "I know it's terrifying," she said softly. "But think about the other families. Think about the other mothers who'll have to sit where you are now if we don't stop this." Lisa didn't pull away, but she didn't respond either. The silence stretched between them, heavy and unyielding. Monica thought she might have lost her, but then Lisa exhaled shakily and wiped at her eyes. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Monica felt a surge of relief, but she kept her tone measured. "Your story, your son's records, anything you have that they made you bury. If we can show the pattern, we can't be ignored." Lisa nodded slowly, her gaze still fixed on the table. "I'll dig it all up. But if this goes south, Monica, if they come after me again—" "They won't," Monica said, though the words felt hollow, even to her. "Not if we stick together." Lisa met her eyes then, a flicker of determination breaking through the fear. "Okay," she said. "Let's do this." When Monica left the house an hour later, the weight on her chest felt a little lighter. She had an ally now, someone who understood the stakes as deeply as she did. But as she started her car and pulled out of the driveway, her phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" A deep, unfamiliar voice greeted her, cold and detached. "You're making a mistake, Monica. Drop this or you'll regret it." Her blood ran cold. "Who is this?" she demanded. But the line had already gone dead. Monica gripped the steering wheel, her mind racing. They knew. Somehow they already knew she'd spoken to Lisa. Fear clawed at the edges of her resolve, but she shoved it aside. They wanted her scared, paralyzed, unsure of herself. But they'd underestimated her. She wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. Monica's hands trembled as she clutched her phone, the weight of the anonymous threat settling heavily in her chest. She pulled her car over to the side of the road, her headlights cutting through the darkness. Her mind spun with questions. How had they known? Were they following her? Was Lisa in danger now? She glanced in her rearview mirror, scanning the empty street for any sign of a car trailing her, but the road behind her remained still. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to focus. Fear wouldn't help her now. She thought about Jaden, asleep at home, oblivious to the storm his mother was navigating. She had promised herself long ago that she'd protect him, no matter the cost. If she let this threat shake her, she'd be failing him, and every other family like Lisa's. She gripped the steering wheel and started driving again, her resolve hardening with every mile. Her first stop wasn't home. It was Elena's apartment. Monica needed to regroup and figure out her next move with someone she could trust. Elena answered the door in sweats, her face pale and drawn. "Monica, it's late. What happened?" she asked, stepping aside to let Monica in. Monica closed the door behind her, leaning against it for a moment as she steadied herself. "They called me," she said, her voice tight. "Someone knows what we're doing. They told me to drop it." Elena froze, her hands hovering over her arms as if she were trying to comfort herself. "Are you sure it wasn't just some random scare tactic?" Monica shook her head, pacing the small living room. "They knew, Elena. They knew I was with Lisa. I don't know how, but they're watching me." Elena sank onto the couch, her face a mix of fear and guilt. "This is getting dangerous, Monica. Maybe we should—" "Don't say it," Monica interrupted, her tone sharper than she intended. "Don't tell me to stop. You've seen the same files I have. You know what they're doing." "I know," Elena shot back, standing abruptly. "But knowing doesn't make this any less terrifying. They've got the power, the money, the lawyers. What do we have? A USB drive and a couple of patient stories? Monica stepped closer, her voice dropping to a determined whisper. We have the truth, and sometimes that's enough. Elena's shoulders slumped as the tension drained out of her. You're braver than I am, she muttered, sitting back down. So, what's the plan? Monica sat beside her, pulling the USB drive from her pocket and placing it on the coffee table between them. We need to make copies of this. If anything happens to me, this information needs to get out. Elena nodded slowly, her fingers tapping against her knee. I can help with that. I've got an old laptop we can use. But Monica, if they know you're talking to Lisa, they'll come after her too. We need to warn her. I already did, Monica said, though the memory of Lisa's hesitant agreement made her stomach twist. She's scared, but she's on board. She's digging up her son's records. Elena frowned, biting her lip. That's risky. They're probably monitoring everything. I know, Monica admitted, leaning back against the couch. But it's the only way to build a case strong enough to take them down. The two women sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. Finally, Elena stood and grabbed her laptop from a nearby shelf. Let's get started, she said, her voice steadier now. The sooner we make those copies, the better. Monica nodded, watching as Elena powered up the laptop and inserted the USB drive. The screen lit up with rows of folders, each one holding a piece of the puzzle they were slowly assembling. As Elena began copying the files, Monica's phone buzzed again. Her heart leapt into her throat as she glanced at the screen. It was a text message this time, from an unknown number. You've been warned. Last chance to walk away. She showed the message to Elena, who blanched. They're not going to stop, are they? Monica shook her head. Number. But neither am I. They worked in tense silence, the laptop humming softly as it copied the files. Monica's mind was a whirlwind of strategies and contingencies. She needed to get the evidence to someone who could act on it, someone outside the hospital's sphere of influence. The media? A lawyer? She wasn't sure yet, but she knew time wasn't on her side. When the copies were finished, Monica pocketed one of the drives while Elena kept the other. Hide it somewhere safe, Monica said. Somewhere they'd never think to look. Elena nodded, her face still pale but her determination evident. You too. And Monica. Be careful. Monica managed a faint smile. You too. We're in this together now. As Monica drove home that night, her thoughts shifted between fear and determination. The text messages, the threats, the shadow outside her window. They were all designed to scare her into silence, but they'd only strengthened her resolve. The stakes were higher than she'd ever imagined, but she wasn't going to stop. Not until the truth was out, no matter the cost. Monica barely slept that night. Every noise outside her window, every creak in her apartment, felt like a harbinger of danger. By the time the first rays of sunlight crept through her curtains, she was already dressed and seated at her dining table, poring over the files again. She couldn't shake the thought of the text messages or the shadow outside her window. The threats weren't empty. Whoever was behind this was willing to go to any length to silence her. Her son, Jaden, shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Morning, Mom, he mumbled, grabbing a box of cereal from the counter. His voice was groggy, but his sharp eyes quickly noticed her tense posture and the papers spread out across the table. You were up all night again, he said, frowning as he sat across from her. What's going on? Monica hesitated. She had shielded him from most of the details, not wanting to burden him with her fight. But Jaden was smart, too smart to let her dodge the question. She reached across the table, resting her hand on his. I'm working on something important, she said carefully. Something that's going to help a lot of people. Jaden tilted his head, studying her. Is it dangerous? Monica smiled faintly, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. Don't worry about that, sweetheart. I'll keep you safe, that's a promise. Jaden didn't look convinced, but he nodded anyway, his trust in her unwavering. Monica watched as he poured his cereal, the weight of her responsibility pressing down on her. She couldn't fail, not for herself, not for him. Later that morning, Monica headed to Lisa's house again. They needed to move fast, and she wanted to see if Lisa had managed to unearth anything useful. The drive felt longer than usual, her paranoia heightened by every car that seemed to follow her for more than a block. By the time she reached Lisa's driveway, her nerves were frayed. Lisa opened the door before Monica could knock, ushering her inside with a hurried gesture. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she held up a thick folder. "I found it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "His records, the emails, everything. I even found the original surgical report, the one they made me sign to keep quiet." Monica took the folder, her hands trembling as she opened it. The documents were damning. Proof of equipment shortages, falsified charts, and an internal memo acknowledging that the delay in Lisa's son's surgery was directly tied to the hospital's cost-cutting measures. Monica felt a surge of both relief and rage. This was the kind of evidence that couldn't be ignored. "This is good," Monica said, her voice firm. "This is what we need." Lisa nodded, but her fear was palpable. "What happens now?" she asked. "Do we go to the media? The police?" Monica hesitated. "The police might be compromised," she admitted. "And the media, it's risky. They could twist the story, or the hospital could bury it before it gets out. We need someone who can't be bought, someone who can make sure this sees the light of day." "Do you know anyone like that?" Lisa asked. Monica thought for a moment. There was one person who came to mind, an investigative journalist named Carter Reynolds. He had a reputation for exposing corruption and holding powerful people accountable. If anyone could blow this story wide open, it was him. "I know someone," Monica said, "but getting this to him won't be easy." Lisa nodded, her grip on her coffee mug tightening. "Whatever it takes," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "I'm in." Before Monica could respond, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. It was another unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello." There was a pause on the other end. Then a familiar voice spoke, a voice that sent a chill down her spine. "You think you're smart, don't you? Digging around where you don't belong." Monica's grip on the phone tightened. "Who is this?" she demanded, though she already knew. The voice chuckled, low and menacing. "You should have listened the first time. Walk away, Monica. This is your last warning." The line went dead, and Monica stared at the phone in her hand, her heart pounding. She looked up at Lisa, who was watching her with wide eyes. "Was that?" Monica nodded, slipping the phone into her pocket. "They're trying to scare us." "Is it working?" Lisa asked, her voice barely audible. Monica stood, her jaw tightening. "No," she said firmly. "It's not." She gathered the folder and tucked it into her bag, then turned to Lisa. "Keep your doors locked and don't talk to anyone you don't trust. I'll handle this." Lisa nodded, her fear evident, but her trust in Monica unshaken. As Monica left the house, she felt the weight of the fight pressing down on her, heavier than ever. The threats were escalating and time was running out. But she had the evidence now, and she had a plan. It wasn't just about exposing the truth anymore. It was about survival. And Monica was prepared to do whatever it took to see this through. Monica wasted no time after leaving Lisa's house. She knew every second mattered now, and the pressure mounting around her only fueled her determination. She had to reach Carter Reynolds, the investigative journalist. His exposés had taken down corrupt politicians and corporate giants in the past. And if anyone could shine a light on Ridgeway Memorial's web of deceit, it was him. But contacting someone like Carter wasn't simple. He didn't entertain just anyone, especially not on short notice. Back at her apartment, Monica locked the door behind her and pulled out her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she searched for Carter's contact information. His professional email address was listed on his website, but she knew sending a random email wouldn't be enough to grab his attention. She needed a hook, something that would compel him to act immediately. She opened her email client and typed out a concise but urgent message. Subject urgent. Life and death whistleblower evidence. Mr. Reynolds, my name is Monica Harris, and I'm a nurse at Ridgeway Memorial Hospital. I have irrefutable evidence of systemic corruption, negligence, and fraud that has resulted in patient deaths, including children. This is not speculation. It's backed by documents, internal emails, and first-hand accounts. I cannot go to the authorities. They are watching me, threatening me, and trying to silence me. You are my only hope of bringing this story to light before they destroy more lives. Attached is a sample of the evidence I have gathered. Please contact me as soon as possible. Lives are at stake. Sincerely, Monica Harris. She attached a few carefully selected files from the USB drive, enough to demonstrate the gravity of the situation without giving away everything. She hit send, her heart pounding as she watched the email disappear into cyberspace. Now, all she could do was wait. The waiting was excruciating. Hours passed, and every sound outside her apartment made her jump. She tried to distract herself by organizing the rest of the evidence, but her mind kept circling back to the threats. What if they were already onto her plan? What if Carter didn't respond in time? As the clock neared midnight, her phone buzzed on the table. She snatched it up, her pulse racing. It was an email notification. She opened it, and her breath caught in her throat. From Carter Reynolds. Subject, urgent, life and death whistleblower evidence. Monica, I've reviewed the files you sent. If what you're saying is true, and the evidence suggests it is, this could be one of the biggest stories of my career. I need to see the rest of the documents and hear your full account. We need to meet, but this can't be done over the phone or email. It's too risky. Let's meet tomorrow, noon, at Courtroom. The Blackbird Cafe. Downtown. I'll be at the table in the back corner. Bring everything you've got. Stay safe. Carter Reynolds' relief flooded through Monica, but it was short-lived. Meeting Carter was a step in the right direction, but it also meant exposing herself further. She knew the hospital, or whoever was behind the threats, wouldn't stop at just words if they found out. She had to be careful. The next morning, Monica woke early, double-checking the folder, USB drive, and backup copies she'd prepared. She left Jaden a note, telling him she'd be running errands and would be back by the evening. As she locked the apartment door behind her, she glanced up and down the hallway, scanning for anything out of the ordinary. The building was quiet, but the tension in her chest didn't ease. She arrived at the Blackbird Cafe a few minutes before noon. It was a small, unassuming spot tucked into a busy street corner. The smell of fresh coffee and baked goods wafted through the air as Monica stepped inside. Her eyes immediately darted to the back corner, where a man with salt and pepper hair and a sharp, focused gaze sat with a notebook open in front of him. Carter Reynolds. Monica approached cautiously, clutching her bag tightly. "Mr. Reynolds?" she asked. He looked up, his expression calm but assessing. "You must be Monica." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit. Let's talk." Monica sat down, her nerves on edge. She placed the folder and a USB drive on the table, sliding them toward him. "This is everything I have," she said, her voice low. "Patient records, financial documents, internal emails. It proves negligence, fraud, and a cover-up that's cost people their lives." Carter picked up the folder, flipping through the pages. His brow furrowed as he skimmed the contents. "This is damning," he murmured. "And you're sure these documents are authentic?" "I've worked at Ridgeway for 10 years, Monica said. "I know their system inside and out. These are real, and they've been threatening me to stay quiet." Carter's jaw tightened. "If this is as big as it looks, they won't just threaten you. They'll try to destroy you." "I know," Monica said, "but I can't stay silent. Too many people have already died." Carter nodded, his eyes narrowing in determination. "All right, I'll start verifying this immediately. But once this story goes live, you're going to need protection. These kinds of people don't go down quietly." Monica's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it and felt her stomach drop. Another text from an unknown number. Last chance, Monica. Call it off or you won't see tomorrow. She slid the phone across the table to Carter, her hands trembling. They're watching me. Carter looked at the message, his expression hardening. Then we need to move fast, and we need to keep you out of sight. Monica swallowed hard, her resolve unwavering despite the fear gnawing at her. Do whatever it takes, she said. Just make sure the truth gets out. Carter nodded, tucking the folder into his bag. I will, and I'll make sure the world listens. As Monica left the cafe, she felt the weight of the battle ahead pressing down on her. The threats were escalating, and the stakes had never been higher. But now, she had an ally who could turn her evidence into action. It was a dangerous game, but Monica was ready to see it through to the end, no matter the cost. Monica's breath hitched as she stepped out of the cafe, her eyes darting across the bustling street. Every stranger's face felt like a threat. Every glance in her direction felt heavy with suspicion. The text still lingered in her mind. Last chance, Monica. Call it off, or you won't see tomorrow. She clutched her bag tightly, the weight of her remaining evidence a reminder that there was no turning back now. Her car was parked a block away, and the short walk felt like an eternity. She checked over her shoulder every few steps, her paranoia growing with each passing moment. Cars zipped by, pedestrians chatted on the sidewalks, and life moved on as if the walls weren't closing in on her. She finally reached her car, sliding into the driver's seat and locking the doors immediately. For a moment, she just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, willing herself to breathe. The meeting with Carter had gone well, but the risks were only escalating. He'd promised to begin verifying the evidence immediately, and to contact her once the first pieces were ready to go public. But now the clock was ticking, and she knew her adversaries wouldn't wait quietly. As Monica started the car and pulled onto the road, her phone buzzed again. Her heart sank as she glanced at the screen, fearing another threat. Instead, it was a call from Elena. Elena, Monica answered quickly, her voice edged with urgency. Monica, something's wrong, Elena said, her voice shaky. I came home after my shift and my apartment's been broken into. Monica's grip on the wheel tightened. What? Are you okay? Did they take anything? They didn't just take things, Elena said, her voice cracking. They went through everything, my laptop, my files, they even dumped out my trash. It's like they were looking for something. Monica felt a cold chill run through her. The files, she said. They're looking for the files. I hid my copy of the USB drive, but what if they come back? Monica, this is serious. They know we're involved. Monica pulled over to the side of the road, her mind racing. Listen to me, Elena. Don't go back to your apartment. Find somewhere safe, stay with a friend, or check into a hotel. Keep a low profile until we figure out what to do next. Monica, I'm scared, Elena admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. What if they won't, Monica interrupted, her tone firm. We're not going to let them win. Just stay safe and I'll call you once I hear from Carter. We're not in this alone anymore. Elena exhaled shakily. Okay. But you be careful too. After hanging up, Monica sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Elena's fear pressing down on her. The situation was spiraling faster than she'd anticipated. If they'd broken into Elena's apartment, it was only a matter of time before they came after her, or worse, her son. Monica drove home cautiously, taking different routes and checking her rearview mirror for any sign of a tail. By the time she reached her apartment, dusk was settling over the city, and the shadows felt darker than usual. She parked in the lot and scanned her surroundings before stepping out of the car. The building seemed quiet, but her instincts were on high alert. Inside, Jaden was on the couch, headphones on as he played a video game. He looked up when Monica walked in, a wide smile spreading across his face. Hey, Mom, you're home late. Hey, sweetheart, Monica said, ruffling his hair as she set her bag down. How was your day? Good. I aced my history test, he said proudly. That's my boy, Monica said, forcing a smile. But her mind was elsewhere, scanning the apartment for anything out of place. The locks on the doors and windows were intact, and nothing seemed disturbed. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching. After dinner, once Jaden was in bed, Monica sat at the table with her laptop. She knew the risks of working at home, but she had no choice. Every minute counted, and she couldn't afford to waste time. She opened the files again, combing through them for anything she might have missed, anything that could strengthen the case. It was then that she noticed something odd. One of the financial documents, a spreadsheet listing equipment purchases, had a line item that seemed out of place. It was labeled as a consulting fee, paid to a shell company with no clear purpose. The amount was staggering, hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled to an entity that didn't seem to exist. Monica's pulse quickened. She began digging deeper, cross-referencing the shell company with other records. What she found made her blood run cold. The company was linked to Richard Blake himself, the payments disguised as legitimate hospital expenses. It was a smoking gun, a direct connection between Blake and the missing funds. She quickly saved her findings to multiple drives and encrypted the files, her hands trembling as she worked. This was it. This was the kind of evidence that could not only take down Blake but expose the entire corrupt system he'd built. But just as she finished, a soft knock came at her door. Monica froze. It was late. Too late for visitors. Her heart pounded as she stood, moving silently to the door. Peering through the peephole, she saw nothing. The hallway was empty. Her phone buzzed again, and she glanced at the screen. Another text from the unknown number. "We're closer than you think." Her blood turned to ice. She stepped back from the door, her mind racing. They were playing with her now, trying to rattle her. But she wouldn't let them see her break. Monica grabbed her phone and dialed Carter. "I found something big," she said as soon as he answered. "A direct link to Blake, but they're on to me. They're right outside." Carter's voice was calm but urgent. "Pack a bag and get out of there. Now I'll send someone to meet you. Don't tell anyone where you're going." Monica hung up and moved quickly, grabbing essentials and stuffing them into a backpack. She paused only to check on Jaden, who was sound asleep, his face peaceful and unaware of the danger. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "We're going to be okay, baby. I promise." As she left the apartment with Jaden in tow, she couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in. The fight was far from over, but she knew one thing for certain. She was running out of time. The air was thick with tension as Monica drove through the dimly lit streets, Jaden asleep in the passenger seat, his head resting against the window. She gripped the wheel tightly, her knuckles white, her eyes darting between the road and the rearview mirror. Every car that appeared behind her sent a spike of adrenaline through her chest, and every turn felt like an opportunity for someone to ambush her. Carter had given her an address, an old motel on the outskirts of town. It was discreet, far enough from her usual routes to throw anyone off her trail. The GPS guided her to the location, a rundown building with flickering neon lights and a gravel parking lot. The sign read, "Hillcrest Inn." Its letters faded and cracked. It wasn't much, but it was safe, for now. Monica parked near the back of the lot, away from the main road, and gently shook Jaden awake. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "we're here. I need you to stay close to me, okay?" Jaden stirred, blinking groggily. "What's going on, Mom? Why are we at a motel?" "It's just for tonight," Monica said, her voice calm but firm. "I'll explain everything later." She grabbed their bags and led him inside, her eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. The clerk at the front desk barely glanced at her as she checked in under a fake name, handing over cash instead of a credit card. Moments later, they were inside a small, dimly lit room. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, and the faint smell of mildew lingered in the air, but it was quiet. It was enough. Jaden sat on the edge of the bed, watching his mom as she locked the door and secured the chain. "Mom," he said hesitantly, "is this about work? Did something happen?" Monica knelt in front of him, her hands resting on his knees. "Jaden, I need you to trust me, okay? There are some bad people who don't want me to tell the truth about what's been happening at the hospital. But I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. For you, for me, and for all the people they've hurt. Jaden's eyes widened. Are we in danger? Monica hesitated, then nodded. A little. But I won't let anything happen to you. That's why we're here. We're staying somewhere safe until I can make sure these people are held accountable. Jaden swallowed hard but nodded. Okay, Mom. I trust you. She kissed his forehead and pulled him into a hug, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Jaden was brave, but he was still a child. The fact that she had to put him through this only fueled her anger toward Blake and his allies. Once Jaden was settled in bed, Monica pulled out her laptop and connected to the motel's shaky Wi-Fi. She sent a message to Carter, letting him know she'd arrived safely. His reply came within minutes. Good, stay put. I'll update you soon. Monica exhaled, leaning back in the rickety chair by the desk. Her mind was racing. She had the evidence, Carter was working on verifying it, and the story was inching closer to exposure. But she also knew her enemies wouldn't sit idly by. The break-in at Elena's apartment, the threats, the shadow outside her window. It was all leading to something. She just didn't know what. Her phone buzzed again. She hesitated before picking it up, half expecting another threat. Instead, it was Elena. Monica answered quickly, her voice low. Elena, are you okay? No, Elena said, her voice shaking. I think someone's following me. Monica's stomach dropped. Where are you? I'm driving, Elena said. I left my car at the hospital and borrowed my sister's, but I swear someone's been tailing me for the last 10 minutes. What should I do? Don't go home, Monica said immediately. Drive somewhere public, somewhere with cameras, a gas station, a diner, anywhere you can be seen. Elena's breathing was ragged. Okay, I'll try. Monica's mind raced. Elena, listen to me. If you're in danger, call the police. Don't try to lose them on your own. I can't, Elena whispered. What if they're in on it? What if… Elena, Monica interrupted, her voice firm. You'll be okay. Just stay calm and stay visible. I'll call Carter and see if he can help. Elena didn't respond immediately, but Monica could hear her breathing slow just a little. All right, she said finally. I'll call you when I'm somewhere safe. The line went dead, and Monica stared at her phone, her thoughts a whirlwind. She quickly sent Carter a message. Elena thinks she's being followed. Can you get someone to help her? His reply came swiftly. I'll make a call. Tell her to stay in public places. Monica put the phone down, her fingers drumming anxiously against the desk. The walls were closing in on all of them. The threats weren't just words anymore, they were action. Blake's people were making their move, and Monica had to stay one step ahead. As the night wore on, Monica barely slept. Every noise outside the motel room made her sit up, her pulse racing. She kept the lights low and the curtains drawn, her laptop open on the desk as she continued combing through the files, searching for anything she might have missed. Then, just before dawn, her phone buzzed again. It was Carter. His message was short, but it sent a shiver down her spine. Be ready. Things are about to get dangerous. Monica stared at the words, her heart pounding. She knew what they meant. The fight wasn't just escalating, it was reaching its breaking point. And she had no choice but to face it head-on. The pale light of dawn filtered through the worn curtains of the motel room, casting faint shadows on the walls. Monica sat at the edge of the bed, fully dressed and alert, her bag packed and ready by the door. Jaden was still asleep, his small frame curled up under the thin blanket. She watched him for a moment, her chest tightening with a mix of love and dread. He was her everything, and she was dragging him into danger. But there was no alternative. Protecting him meant exposing the truth, no matter the cost. Her phone buzzed softly on the desk, and she quickly grabbed it to avoid waking Jaden. It was another message from Carter. I've verified enough to go public. I'm setting up the first wave of the story with my editor now. We're moving fast, but you need to stay off the grid today. They'll escalate. Monica's fingers hovered over the screen as she crafted her response. Understood. Elena's in danger too. Any word from her? The reply came almost instantly. She called me last night. She's safe for now, but scared. I've arranged for someone to keep an eye on her. Stay where you are. I'll update you once the story breaks. Monica exhaled, a mix of relief and unease settling over her. Carter's words were encouraging. Progress was being made. But the warning at the end loomed large. She glanced out the window, her eyes scanning the parking lot. The motel was quiet, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She turned back to Jaden, who stirred slightly but didn't wake. Quietly, she moved to the desk and opened her laptop. The files she had meticulously gathered were still there, safely encrypted and backed up. As she stared at the screen, her thoughts drifted to Lisa. Monica hadn't heard from her since they'd met to review the boys' records, and that silence gnawed at her. Was Lisa safe? Or had she already become another target? Her fingers hesitated before dialing Lisa's number. The phone rang once, twice, and then went to voicemail. Monica frowned but left a message. "Lisa, it's Monica. I just wanted to check in and make sure you're okay. Call me when you can." She ended the call, her unease deepening. Just as she closed her laptop, there was a faint knock at the door. Monica froze, her heart pounding. She glanced at Jaden, still asleep, then moved toward the door cautiously. Peering through the peephole, she saw a young woman in a black jacket standing outside, holding a folder. She looked vaguely familiar, but Monica couldn't place her. "Who is it?" Monica called, her voice low but firm. "Ms. Harris?" the woman said, her tone calm but hurried. "My name is Naomi. I work with Carter Reynolds. He sent me to check on you." Monica hesitated. Carter hadn't mentioned sending anyone, but the woman's demeanor seemed genuine. Still, she couldn't afford to trust blindly. "Do you have any proof of that?" The woman glanced around nervously, then pulled a card from her pocket and held it up to the peephole. It bore Carter's name and contact information. "You can call him if you need to verify," she said. "But I don't have much time. He sent me because things are moving fast and he thought you might need backup." Monica considered her options. If this woman was lying, she could be walking into a trap. But if she was telling the truth, refusing her help could leave Monica vulnerable. After a moment's hesitation, Monica unlocked the door, but kept the chain secured. "What do you want?" she asked, peering through the narrow opening. Naomi leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Carter wanted me to tell you that the story is already in motion. He's running the first segment in less than an hour. But you need to be ready. Blake's people won't take this lying down. They'll come after you." Monica's stomach tightened. "What about Elena? And Lisa?" "Elena's being watched by someone on our team," Naomi said. "But we haven't been able to reach Lisa. Carter's worried she might already be compromised." Monica's breath caught. She'd feared as much, but hearing it confirmed made her chest tighten. "I need to find her," she said firmly. "She's part of this. I can't just leave her behind." Naomi frowned, glancing over her shoulder. "That's not what Carter wants you to do. He said you need to lay low and protect your son. Let us handle the rest." Monica shook her head, her voice resolute. "Lisa trusted me. She gave me her son's records. I can't sit here and do nothing while she's in danger." Naomi hesitated, then sighed. "Okay," she said finally. "If you're going to do this, you need to be smart about it. I'll help you, but we have to move quickly." Monica nodded, glancing back at Jaden. She hated the thought of leaving him, even for a moment, but she couldn't bring him into more danger. "He can't come with us," she said quietly, "but I can't leave him here alone." Naomi pulled out her phone. "I'll call someone to watch him, someone we trust." Minutes later, an older woman with kind eyes arrived. She introduced herself as Margaret, a retired journalist who worked with Carter in the past. Monica hesitated again, but the warmth in Margaret's demeanor eased her doubts. Jaden, though confused, seemed to take to her quickly. "I'll keep him safe," Margaret said, her voice steady. "You focus on what you need to do." With a heavy heart, Monica kissed Jaden's forehead and whispered, "I'll be back soon. Be good for Margaret, okay?" Jaden nodded, his eyes wide but brave. "Be careful, Mom." Monica and Naomi stepped out into the cool morning air, the motel parking lot eerily quiet. "Where do we start?" Monica asked. Naomi glanced at her phone. "Lisa's house. If she's not there, we'll figure out our next move." As they drove, Monica's grip on the steering wheel tightened. The stakes were higher than ever, and the danger was closing in. But she wasn't giving up. Not on Lisa, not on the truth, and not on the fight she'd started. Whatever was waiting for her at Lisa's house, she would face it head on. The drive to Lisa's house was a quiet but tense journey. Monica's eyes scanned the rearview mirror constantly, every car behind them a potential threat. Naomi sat in the passenger seat, her phone in hand, keeping an eye on updates from Carter. The silence between them was heavy, each woman lost in her own thoughts. When they turned onto Lisa's street, the neighborhood was still and unassuming, bathed in the golden glow of the early morning sun. Monica slowed the car as they approached Lisa's house, her heart pounding in anticipation. From the outside, everything seemed normal. The curtains were drawn, the porch light was off, and her car was still in the driveway. But something felt off. Monica parked a few houses down and killed the engine. "Something's wrong," she said, her voice low. Naomi nodded, scanning the house. "Let's approach carefully. If they're inside, we don't want to alert them." They exited the car quietly, Monica's hand gripping her bag tightly as they moved toward the house. The air felt thick, almost suffocating as they reached the porch. Naomi motioned for Monica to stay behind her as she knocked on the door. The sound echoed through the stillness, but there was no answer. Naomi knocked again, more forcefully this time. "Lisa, it's Naomi and Monica. Are you there?" Still no response. Monica's heart sank. She stepped forward, her hand trembling as she tried the doorknob. It was locked. She exchanged a glance with Naomi, who nodded in silent agreement. Monica moved to the window and peered inside, but the curtains blocked her view. "Check around back," Naomi whispered. Monica nodded and carefully made her way around the side of the house. The backyard was eerily quiet, the grass wet with dew. She tried the back door, but it was locked as well. Her eyes fell on the kitchen window, which was slightly ajar. Without hesitation, she reached up and slid it open further, then climbed inside. Her feet landed softly on the tiled kitchen floor, and the faint smell of burnt coffee lingered in the air. The house was deathly quiet, every creak of the floorboards under her weight amplifying her anxiety. "Lisa?" Monica called softly, her voice trembling. No response. Naomi followed her in moments later, her movements careful and deliberate. The two women exchanged a glance, and Naomi nodded toward the hallway leading to the bedrooms. Monica's heart pounded as she moved forward, each step feeling heavier than the last. She pushed open the first door, an empty guest room. The second door was a bathroom, equally empty. That left only one room. Monica hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorknob. Naomi stepped up beside her, her expression grim. Together, they pushed the door open. The sight that greeted them made Monica's stomach drop. Lisa was sitting on the floor, her back against the bed, her face pale and tear-streaked. Her hands were shaking, clutching a folder to her chest like a lifeline. "Lisa," Monica breathed, rushing to her side. "What happened? Are you okay?" Lisa looked up at her, her eyes red and filled with terror. "They came," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Last night, they came. They threatened me, said if I didn't stop helping you, they'd—" Her voice broke and she buried her face in her hands. Monica crouched beside her, her heart breaking. "It's okay," she said softly, placing a hand on Lisa's shoulder. "You're safe now. We're here." Naomi knelt beside them, her expression dark. "Did they hurt you?" Lisa shook her head. But they took my phone and my computer. They went through everything. I don't know what they were looking for, but they kept asking about the files." Monica glanced at the folder clutched in Lisa's hands. "Is that—" Lisa nodded, her grip tightening. "It's the only copy I had left. I hid it after they left. I couldn't let them find it." Monica's jaw clenched, a mix of anger and determination surging through her. They know we're close to exposing them. That's why they're escalating. Naomi stood, her phone already in hand. We need to get her out of here. This place isn't safe anymore. Lisa looked up, panic flashing across her face. Where am I supposed to go? They'll find me wherever I go. Monica squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. We'll figure it out. Carter has resources. He can help. Naomi nodded, already texting Carter. I'll let him know we're bringing her in. He'll have a safe house ready. Lisa hesitated, glancing between the two women. You really think we can stop them? Monica met her gaze, her voice steady. I don't just think we can. I know we can. We have everything we need. Now we just have to make sure the world hears it. Lisa took a deep, shaky breath and nodded. Okay, let's do it. Monica helped her to her feet, and the three women quickly gathered what little Lisa had left that hadn't been destroyed. As they stepped outside, Monica couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Her eyes scanned the street, every shadow a potential threat. We need to move fast, Naomi said, guiding them toward the car. Carter will have a plan, but we have to stay ahead of them. Monica nodded, glancing over her shoulder one last time as they climbed into the car. The fight was far from over, but they were one step closer to the truth, and Monica was more determined than ever to see it through. The car sped down the highway, the tension inside thick and suffocating. Monica sat in the driver's seat, her knuckles white as she gripped the wheel, her eyes darting between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. Lisa was in the back seat, clutching the folder like her life depended on it, her gaze fixed on the passing scenery but seeing none of it. Naomi sat beside Monica, her phone constantly buzzing with updates from Carter. They've seen the first wave of the story, Naomi said, her voice tense. Carter's editor just published the initial article. It's trending already, but the hospital has issued a statement denying everything. Monica's jaw tightened. Of course they have. They won't admit anything until they're backed into a corner. Naomi nodded. They're trying to discredit it, saying the documents were fabricated and calling it a smear campaign. Carter's pushing the second piece now. The financial records and the direct link to Blake. Once that's out, they won't be able to explain it away. Lisa let out a shaky breath from the back seat. Do you think it'll be enough? Do you think people will believe us? They will, Monica said firmly, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. The evidence is too strong, and once more people come forward, they won't be able to hide anymore. Naomi's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, her face paling slightly. Carter just sent me a heads up. Blake's team is scrambling. They're calling in favors, trying to track us down. Monica's stomach churned. How close are we to the safe house? 15 minutes, Naomi said, glancing out the window. We'll be okay if we keep moving. But as the words left her mouth, Monica caught a glimpse of something in the rearview mirror, a black SUV that had been tailing them for the past few miles. Her pulse quickened as she slowed slightly, trying to confirm her suspicion. The SUV slowed too, keeping the same distance. We're being followed, Monica said, her voice low but urgent. Naomi turned to look, her face hardening when she saw the vehicle. They found us. Lisa's breathing quickened. What do we do? What if they catch us? They won't, Monica said, her mind racing. She tightened her grip on the wheel, scanning the road for options. The highway stretched out ahead, but an exit loomed in the distance. It led to a network of back roads, less predictable but also riskier. Hang on, Monica said, veering sharply onto the exit ramp. The SUV followed, its headlights closing the distance. Monica's heart pounded as she navigated the winding roads, her hands steady despite the chaos. She pushed the car faster, the engine roaring as they sped through narrow lanes and sharp curves. The SUV stayed on their tail, relentless. Naomi, Monica said, her voice clipped. Call Carter. Let him know what's happening. Naomi was already dialing. Carter, she said quickly when he picked up. We're being followed. Black SUV, no plates. We're heading toward the safe house, but they're not letting up. Carter's voice was calm, but urgent. Get off the main roads. I'll send someone to intercept you, just stay ahead of them. Naomi relayed the instructions to Monica, who nodded sharply. She took another turn, this one leading them into a stretch of dense woods. The road was uneven, the tires skidding slightly on the gravel, but Monica kept the car steady. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. "We don't have a choice," Monica said. "They won't stop until they get what they want." Suddenly, the SUV sped up, closing the gap. Monica glanced at the rearview mirror and saw the vehicle swerve, trying to force her off the road. She gritted her teeth, jerking the wheel to keep control. "They're trying to box us in," Naomi said, gripping the door handle. Monica's mind raced. She spotted a narrow dirt path branching off the road ahead. It wasn't meant for vehicles, but it was her only chance to lose them. "Hold on!" she yelled, turning sharply onto the path. The car bounced violently as it hit the uneven terrain, branches scraping against the sides. The SUV hesitated for a moment before following, its headlights cutting through the trees. Monica pushed the car harder, the engine protesting with every bump and turn. Then, just as the path curved sharply, the SUV miscalculated. Its tires skidded on the loose dirt, and the vehicle slammed into a tree with a deafening crash. Monica didn't stop to look back. She kept driving, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. After a few more minutes, the path opened onto a quiet back road. Monica slowed the car, her hands trembling on the wheel. Naomi let out a breath she'd been holding, and Lisa sobbed quietly in the back seat, clutching the folder even tighter. "We're almost there," Naomi said, her voice shaky but relieved. "Carter's team will be waiting for us." Monica nodded, her jaw tight. The immediate danger was behind them, but she knew the fight was far from over. They had won this battle, but the war was still raging, and Monica was ready to see it through to the end. As they pulled onto the final stretch toward the safe house, Monica glanced at Lisa in the rearview mirror. "We're going to finish this," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "No matter what it takes." Monica's journey was more than a fight against corruption. It was a testament to the power of courage, truth, and resilience. Though the threats were relentless and the cost immense, she proved that one voice, when joined by others, could shatter even the strongest walls of deception. Her bravery ignited change, saving lives and exposing a system that had failed so many. The lesson was clear. Silence enables injustice, but speaking out, even in fear, can transform the world. Stand up, speak truth, be the change. Because when you fight for what's right, you don't just save others, you save yourself.